Hey team, just wanted to do a quick look at the new Oathmark Human Cavalry kit from North Star and Osprey. So this one comes in a box containing 15 human cavalry. There are 5 sprues of cavalry and 3 sprues of infantry. So if we just grab the box contents. There are 5 of these identical sprues, each of which contain 3 horses. The 3 horses are divided into 2 parts, so they assemble very quickly. Each of the horse poses is quite dynamic, so they will only match up with one half. You can't mix and match the 2 sides of the horses to create different poses, but given you've got 3 fairly dynamic poses, I wouldn't imagine it's going to be too much of an issue with a variety of horse poses across units. It's not going to look too samey, I wouldn't think, once you get the riders on as well. Quick point on these, they went together incredibly well. There was almost no seam in the 2 parts, so really appreciated that. You get 15 of these square bases, 25 by 50 mil. And I won't go over this too much, as I'm sure it's been covered elsewhere. But 3 identical sprues, each of which contain sets of arms for archers, sets of arms for spears, hand weapons, and then arrow loading arms and arms holding shields. So you'll get effectively 15 right arms and 10 left arms. So the bow-armed arms will come as a pair, and the right arms can be used to accommodate either the hand weapons or the spears, and both of those sets will require a left arm, which is a plain arm where you can have the option of using a shield. The legs and bodies match up quite well. What you might fail to notice initially is that some of the legs have patterning on them to match up to particular torsos, and they're not necessarily aligned with the order on the sprue, so just be mindful of that if that's a cause for concern to you in particular. You additionally get the command sprue components, I guess, so standards and different weapons and a couple of standard toppers. No musician in this kit because that seems to be the way with the Oathmark ones, although ordinarily there are standalone miniatures which can be used as a musician if you feel like adding one later. Additional components are pouches and daggers here, and 2 types of heads, whether you are going to have the mounted rangers, I think it is, or just the normal cavalry. So you get 2 different kinds of heads there, one with cowls, one without. One thing I would like to point out about this, the sprue layout is excellent. I have not been able to find any connection point that isn't sort of on a hidden area. So they're all very much between the legs, between the leg and torso connection. This one will be hidden, this will be hidden. Every connection point on this sprue, with the possible exception of the daggers, which you couldn't really do much about, has been placed intelligently to make assembly as easy as possible and to hide the connection points, so that's really good. All right, so I've assembled a couple. This one here, I'll just try and show you the seam connection in the back. I don't know how well this will pick up with the focus. I haven't done any clean-up work on that. That was just as it went together, so it was quite sort of difficult to identify a seam once that was pushed together. Oh, it's probably showing up a little bit better in this light. But this gentleman has just been assembled with a spear and shield, and I've done an additional one. And for this guy, I swapped out some of the components for the Perry Miniatures Light Cavalry set. So he has a Perry Miniatures left arm and right arm, the right arm with the trumpet, so I have a musician. And I've given him the stored bow and arrow bag from the Perry Miniatures Light Cavalry sprue as well. Now, the Perry Miniatures components are slightly finer, but I think they scale reasonably appropriately. So if we put these two side by side, yes, you can see the arms are a little bit finer on the musician, but it's not overly noticeable. And on the topic of scale comparisons, I've got a few miniatures here just to demonstrate how they'll rank up. So these two are Perry miniatures. So we have a mounted knight and one of the light cavalry. Might just grab a base and chuck him on to even things up. So as you can see, they scale approximately well. The Oathmark one is slightly larger, but it's not too noticeable. And again, if we use the light cavalry, you can once again see they will scale reasonably well. This is a Eureka gendarme, so he's quite small by comparison. This is a Warlord 30 Years War cavalry troop, which doesn't particularly scale well, but then the periods are a little bit off, so it's probably not going to be too much of an issue. He says periods as though fantasy miniatures match with any historical period. I think this guy was one of the Fireforge mounted sergeants. So a reasonable approximation of scale there. They'd match quite well within a unit. And finally, Games Workshop Bretonnian mounted lord, I think it was. So if we try and boost this base up to an equivalent height, you can see that the Oathmark miniatures are quite small by comparison. However, if you were looking at using these for a Bretonnian army to act as squires, it's reasonable to assume that the knights would have all the war horses, and these would be essentially the riding horses for the mounted yeomen. So I think lore-wise they would match quite appropriately there. So if I was going to do a size comparison, you'd probably have your GW, then the Oathmark, then the Fireforge, then Perry, then Warlord, then Eureka. So if we're looking at it like this, I think these would all scale approximately, depending on what you were doing. So if you were going to do a Bretonnian Fantasy Games Workshop army, I think that would be fine for squires or mounted yeomen. If you were going to incorporate these into some historicals, I think if you were using the Fireforge, you could mix and match between units quite effectively. If you were seeking to do something with the Perry miniatures, you could probably get away with things, but I might want to leave them as separate units or just do component part swapping if you needed something a bit more specialized, such as this guy here. Alright, I hope that's helpful. Hope everyone's having a great day. Stay safe and take care.